Yeah. Jamming on the one. The second time around, you the only one. You the only one. You the only one. Now that I know you the one. We living in the word like I know the sun. You the only one.
You said it's mine for the taking. You blow my mind with this thing called love. You know every move I'm making. You know everything I'm thinking of. And I'm thinking of you all of the time. Oh, yeah. I can't ever get you out of my mind. You are the only one. 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 It was always you from the start. It was always you all the time. I wrote you on my heart. I wrote you on my mind. And I'm thinking of you all of the time. Always. Say it. Oh, you are the only one. You are the only one. You are the only. You are the only one. You are the only one.
To receive instant notification each time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.
Helping you along the way. Helping you to make it through another day. Yeah, yeah. Everything you need to know that you never knew. That you need to know. Well, I got perspective.
Well, hello and good afternoon and good morning to everybody. I want to welcome you all for joining us. This series that we're doing on love, primarily dealing with the different characteristics, the different types of love, the different everything that is love, right? Putting into category the difference between true and real unadulterated love and then that fake stuff or the stuff that's actually mental. This is where we are today because today we are dealing with that obsessive mania type of love. Now, a lot of times we've watched movies and we've seen different things. And, you know, as we've watched those movies, we've said, gee whiz, that is a really unique kind of situation. Well, they may be focusing on a guy and a gal who started out great. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the movie, where you thought you were rooting for them. You wanted them to be the love couple in the movie. They end up being a little quirky and something ends up going wrong. I remember watching several movies like that back in the day. We had a guest here on the Lockhart Perspective um, several months ago, but she was telling us about the love story that she had. It started out similar to what we're dealing with today, just head over heels love, right? Well, let me show you what I mean. This kind of love. See that? Starts out all nice. Boy meets girl, girl meets boy. They fall in love with each other. They're totally enamored of one another. You cannot separate them. He believes he's found his soulmate, and she does too. And as time progresses, they grow more and more in love. And they've decided, well, because we love each other so much, I think we should spend the rest of our lives loving each other this way. That's how a lot of stories start. And I'm sure that you and I both know that there's a lot of times those stories have started that way, but most assuredly, they didn't end that way. So, what are we talking about today? Today, we are talking about that manic love, that obsessive love, the love that mamas and daddies sort of see starting with their children and they go, wait a minute, she doesn't seem to be healthy. I don't think I want my son around her. She's got some tendencies. Yeah, she's got a few tendencies that I don't think he's prepped for, you start to say about your son. And you wonder, for your daughter, is this thing going to end up healthy? What do they end up with? Well, we are going to take a look today at that unhealthy love because it's that unhealthy love that is really plaguing a lot of people. So your question really is this love or is it mania? Our story today is coming from bphope.com because there is a delineative line between the two. This story, the link is down below in the description. I do not have any rights to the story. However, it is cited at the bottom there inside of our description. So it says, is it love or is it mania? Giddy romance and mania have a lot in common. So learn the signs that tell you which is which. In Irving Berlin's catchy Broadway tune, You're Just in Love, a puzzled young man wonders why he can't eat, wonders why he just cannot sleep. He feels like he's walking on air. It's okay, he's told. You don't need analyzing. It's no surprising. You're not sick. You're just in love. Well, in this particular writer's story, they say when you have bipolar disorder, which is generally what you notice in that young person that your child is dating or your friend is dating, okay? Because you've got the spirit of discernment, so you know something's not right. More than likely, this is a person who's letter A been diagnosed or they haven't been diagnosed. Either way it goes, there is hope for them if they're willing to get themselves together. But the writer of this story says, when you have bipolar disorder, though, the question becomes a little more complicated. Is it love? You're swept by euphoria, erotic stirrings, a special feeling of connection, and constant thoughts of the one you desire? Or are those traits actually signs of looming mania? Turns out a group of psychiatrists have been long looking at the love versus mania conundrum. Members of the Human Sexuality Committee of the group of the for Advancement for Psychiatry, which is an organization that dedicated to addressing the social needs of people with mental disorders, are trying to come up with helpful answers to guide individuals who are bipolar. There's the doctor's name. Elizabeth Haas, MD, is an assistant clinical professor of psychiatry at the Columbia University and a member of the Sexuality Committee, says that learning to tell the difference can help avert harmful choices. Quote, when you are in a hypomanic or manic state, you're almost more likely to feel you're in love, says Haas. And she continues, you may then act on that feeling when making major long term life decisions, not understanding your state and something to do with what you're feeling. Robin, a 38-year-old artist from southern United States, remembers diving into toxic relationships during periods of elevated mood. Robin says, I'd feel a zippity doo dah in love with myself and in love with myself in hypomania, but then when someone comes along, I feel even more so about him. Robin says, who was diagnosed with bipolar in her 20s. We're talking about mania love. We're talking about manic love. We're talking about the obsessive love that can definitely cause danger. Now, Robin recalls a draining love affair with a man that she thought was her absolute perfect soulmate, despite his controlling behavior and their constant arguing. In retrospect, she assesses him as, quote, a fake and a narcissist. Whether she knows it or not, she really was as well. So she goes on. She adds, I wasn't really a victim of him. I was a victim of myself. I didn't have a healthy gauge then, and I was repeating certain patterns. Now that she's stable and better educated about her disorder, Robin says lessons that she learned from that tumultuous relationship helped her set better boundaries going forward. Even though the roller coaster left me confused, she says, and less trusting of myself, I use it to as a reminder to slow down and better vet the object of my feelings along with my feelings themselves, she says. So, bipolar mania versus true love. Slowing down is good advice for anyone caught up in the intense emotions of love, says David Goldberg, who is an MD and he's an assistant clinical professor of psychiatry at Weill Cornell Medical College. During that early phase, he explains, it's common to shy away from the uncomfortable parts of getting to know one another. The impulsivity associated with bipolar can make it even more likely that you'll steamroll ahead. You'll just steamroll ahead. You'll just forget about it. It's basically he's saying here you're going to completely throw caution to the wind. You're not gonna care. You're just gonna keep moving, and it is what it is. No one's gonna be able to stop you. He says, on behalf of the Sexuality Committee, Goldberg and Haas prepared a working paper titled In the Mood for Love. In it, they describe the emotional state of limerence, the stages of romantic love characterized by blissful euphoria and intense longing for another person, and compare it to the egocentricity and the grandiosity and elation of mania. So when you're dealing with people who are like overly in love, just head over heels in love, and it seems to be a bit much, it's because more than likely they're in that grandiose type of mania. So mania, especially when you're considering bipolar, it's going in different phases. So they may be introduced to a situation at a different phase in their actual physical walk at that moment, and wherever it hits them, they go from there to there. Oftentimes people who are suffering from this type of stuff, they don't even know the difference. They really don't know the difference. So I want to show you a really quick clip of the young lady that we invited. Now, of course, the part of the clip is a dated part, right? Because this was done a few months ago. So please don't pay attention to any of the actual dates and times, right? But I do want you to hear what happened to her because as we just saw, I'll just go out and tell you, she fell in love with a guy that she thought was the one. He was the most wonderful man that she had ever met. She thought he fit every bit, every bit of her bill, every bit he filled. Okay. But then what ends up happening to her is he stabs her within just inches of her life. She literally was punctured several times, and this was witnessed by her daughter. And we did have her on several months ago. But she wrote a book and it was called Stab to Life. It's available on Amazon. And I just want to show you really quickly here. Let's see. Okay, great. Now we're going to show you this video with her. And I want you to see, I'm so glad there are not a lot of people here. I am so glad it's just a couple of us because this is a topic that a lot of people don't really necessarily know that they're dealing with, but it is one that when the person that's supposed to hear it hears it, prayerfully, this will be something that'll wake them up. So here we go. Hey everyone, Felicia here of the Lockhart Perspective, and I want to let you know about an outstanding book called Stabbed to Life by author Adrian Green, also known as author A. Michelle. Adrian will be here telling us all the details that led up to her being stabbed 18 times in the presence of her own children. The book Stabbed to Life outlines everything you need to know and also gives you some red flags about domestic violence and sexual assault. So don't forget to set that reminder and come out and meet the author of the book Stabbed to Life, Adrian Green, right here on the Lockhart Perspective, October 2nd, 8 p.m. Central Time. Okay, so you see what the premise was, right? The premise of that was simply what it was that was going on, right? How this person had actually been in love and this happened to her. Now, you can go back in the archives and you can actually find that story. But what ended up happening was she found a man after she had just come down from being very obese. She had no self esteem. She had a very low self worth, all of that good stuff, right? And what ended up happening was this man did just what the book said. And so I want to show you how we went from having that first love affair right here, how we went from here, all in love. Oh, we're just young and we're in love. And this is the only person that I'm ever going to have in my life that loves me. This is the type of mindset that goes on. And so what ends up happening, especially for believers, is we end up replacing our Father's love with this. You will throw caution to the wind. You won't think anything else matters. You won't even look at the signs that the Father gives you while you're dealing with this. While you're in this, nobody can tell you anything. People who are moved by the spirit of discernment will come to you and tell you something doesn't seem right, and I don't think you should marry this person. And yet and still, we do it. And when we do it, then we end up going into a totally different place. And this is where we end up. The difference between love and this. Constant accusation when you're not even doing anything. Constantly telling you, you don't love me. Please don't leave me. Here, I want you to marry me. Don't go. Please stay. And you're like, I gotta go. I've gotta go. I can't live like this. I can't live like this. You're smothering me. It's no way that I can live this way. Well, oftentimes it doesn't just end with that person walking away. Sometimes it ends up with that person being stalked and running behind that individual, constantly popping up every place. You've gone in the relationship and all of a sudden you found out that this person has not only become your mate, but they've also infiltrated your life. They've begun to have friendships and relationships with people who they probably shouldn't, because now they need an alliance. And what they've done with that alliance is they've built themselves up a fortress for the future, because they already know that they can't keep up this knight in shining armor, or damsel in distress, or this wonderful damsel type of behavior. They can't keep that character up. So they've built up for their future a relationship with everybody around you. And even when you break up, that person still pops up. Well, the difference between true love and an unhealthy obsession is the fact that while you're with that person, you become their everything. And that's a problem. You become their everything. I honestly believe that in the United States specifically, we are allowing our young to date too soon. We don't teach them about the precepts of love as it relates to our Father. We don't teach them what they need when it comes to understanding how he loved us so much that he sent his only son. We don't focus on those types of things with our children. We don't. What we focus on is whatever's going on at the moment. The mother is not at home. The father is out working. The mother is out working. The children are pretty much left to TikTok. They're left to YouTube. They're left to whatever the new platform is today that teaches them what love is. And the sad part is that a lot of these musicians and a lot of these rappers and a lot of these singers, they're the ones who are now teaching our children about love. And when things don't end up the way they think that they should, then you end up with a problem. Now you've got a 16-year-old who's totally hooked on this 15-year-old who's growing and has decided, no, I don't like you anymore. And now the 16-year-old can't hang because they don't understand. They don't understand this love. Then that relationship, that how to deal with the relationships actually grows and it gets older. That person gets older. And as they get older, the problem enhances because now you've got a 25-year-old body with a 16-year-old boy's mind or girl's mind that is still stuck on this mania of love. This is a very serious situation because oftentimes within all different types of communities, this ends up being the thing that you read about in the newspaper, that you'll see about on the 6 and the 11 o'clock news at night. Somebody just couldn't take it anymore. He really wanted her to love him and she wouldn't. She really needed him to care and love for her, but he wouldn't. And they flip. And the next thing you know, they meet the news. And the next thing you know, they're either gone because they had a standoff or they're in prison forever because they did not understand the difference. And no one took the time to diagnose them. And no one took the time to actually teach them because we're pushing our children out there too soon. We're allowing our kids to grow up too soon. And it starts at the childhood level. It doesn't just start at the 25-year-old young man that your daughter brings home. When she brought that guy home, it didn't start there. Not at all. That young man had problems long before you ever met him. That young man or that young woman had problems long before you ever even noticed that they were dating your child. And long before you ever noticed that not only were they dating your child, but they had some mental issues. So it's the whole mania bipolar love. It's the whole I just can't live without you type of love. No human being should ever have that type of position in our lives unless it's our spouse and it's a healthy love. Now, there have been several different stories, movies to include, how they end up being physical. I just can't live without you. You can't leave me. And then all of a sudden the guy's going upside the girl's head. And then the end of the movie is, she ends up hurting him or harming him or doing something. But either way it goes, no matter how it starts, it always ends up the same. And that is in turmoil. Well, our Father doesn't want us to have unhealthy relationships like this. These types of unhealthy relationships are not of our Father. They're just not. And as people who are believers, it's time for us to take authority over our children and teach them what they need to know. It's hard to teach a grown child. So I would imagine that this is for those who have younger kids who are teaching them to not look at the TikToks of life to follow what love is and what love isn't. Teach your children the word. Teach your children the book of Psalms. Teach them Proverbs. Show them what the difference is between real, true love and this thing in their head. Moreover, get your child help if they need it. Because once they get 18 years old, there's nothing that you can do, mom, dad. You can't. The only thing that you can do is spend the rest of your life praying that nothing happens to them. Because if they are bipolar or they are having some type of mental health issue, and it seems to be rampant right now in the United States, there will be nothing that you can do after they get 18 years old. And in some states, even younger. So it's time for the body of believers to knock it off when it comes to this. I just can't live without him. I just can't live without her. And being quiet about it. When we see loved ones, children, family members falling into these things, it's time to take a stand. And it's time to put them in their place and say, hey, look, I think it's time for you to go get some help because this is unhealthy. And then if that person doesn't want to, cut them off and let them go on about their business. But when it's young children, you have to put your foot down. And when I say young children, I mean people who are not emotionally available and who are not emotionally inept to deal with relationships. Did you know that there's a big difference? Even though we can look back and say, well, grandmother was married at 15 and my mother was married at 16, and yeah, that was a different time. Children were getting up running cows in the morning. Kids were getting up, plowing snow, dealing with snow and taking out the trash and putting out big bales of hay out in the um all out in the stables and things of that nature. They were more responsible. There were more things that they had to do. Their level of responsibility was greater. And so with that, they had a healthier level of understanding because they weren't dealing with trivial things like games and like the TikToks and like the Twitters and like and the Instagrams and the Instagram thought models and all this other stuff. These are the things that are shaping our children today. And that's the reason why the 15-year-old of today is not even eligible to date. Because if you're trying to juxtapose the 15-year-old of the 60s and the 50s to now, you're wasting your time. That's a futile conversation. It's actually a moot point because there is nothing that a child that age today has in comparison to our grandparents and our parents of yesterday. We're not putting in our children the ability to be healthy in relationships because we're not with our kids. We have to take the responsibility of understanding that we're not doing what we need to as parents. But if you're listening to this and if you're seeing this, then you're going to notice that these are the signs and symptoms of a manic individual. Mania love is not a healthy love. It is not a healthy love. It is a very unhealthy love that can have very catastrophic consequences. Very catastrophic consequences. Dire consequences. And so we've got to open up our eyes and we've got to pull our children back. Remember the days where, I know it's really cool when we try to reflect on the past, and sometimes it's very healthy for us to remember things from the past. It's okay for us to do that. But do you remember the days where we actually led our children to Sunday school and we taught them the differences? The strength that our children who went to the Sunday school then is even less now, because at least those children, our children who are tripping right now today, at least they had that. But can you imagine not giving them any of that? Well, that's what's going on right now. They don't have any of that. They don't have any of the word. The majority of the children don't even go to Sunday school. The majority of the parents, back when you were going to regular service, they didn't even make it to that 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock service. So if it's minimal then, it's even less now, especially now that no one is able to really, congregate and hang out together. So this entire last 30 minutes has been about that manic type of love, the mania kind of love that you see when your daughter or your son brings this cat to your house or this girl to your house, and it's that feeling you just can't put your finger on, but it's a little much. You find, Father, that your wife has to vie or really has to, ask your son, honey, how come we haven't seen you? And the girl is looking in the room and she's sort of rolling her eyes. You've all been here at one point or another with your children, and then you end up having a big problem. I, as a young woman, dealt with a man. After my mother died, I thought that was love. And it wasn't until my father was standing at the side of a hospital bed weeping that I realized it was not. Because the guy told me every single thing that I wanted to hear, everything that I thought I needed at that moment. After losing my mom, my birth mother, in 83, I, like an idiot, and like so many other young women and men, went out and decided to make my own family, the feeling that I missed. And I got married to a man that beat me within an inch of my life. I lay there in that hospital bed, absolutely unrecognizable, where my stepfather stood at the edge and sat at the edge of my bed and cried. All because I thought this was love. I noticed the beginning of the signs. But being 19 years old, I didn't really put two and two together. 18, 19, I didn't put two and two together. I thought that was really love. And it did not hit me literally and physically until 1 week after we said I do. He withheld his physical abuse until 1 week after we got married. And from that point to the time I was in the hospital near death, I did not know. From that time, he beat me almost every single week, sometimes 2 or 3 times in that week, all because I believed that this was love in the very beginning because he withheld that cuckoo piece. But when I look back in retrospect, I can remember some of the signs. I can remember some of the comments that I didn't understand at 19, 18 and a half, 19. I didn't understand some of the comments. I was 19, he was like 23. I hadn't even turned a good 19 yet. My mom died when I was 18. And so looking for family, looking for love in all the wrong places, that's where I ended up. And so that's the reason why I have to tell you that the obsessive or mania love is not love. Consequently, this young man ended up being diagnosed bipolar schizophrenic, mentally unhealthy, not able to be married, not able to even function for himself. He was hearing voices telling him things to do. I didn't understand any of that. And what an introduction to life after mother passed, right? So, this story and this topic is really close to my heart. When I tell you, watch and monitor your daughter, watch and monitor your son. There are a lot of unhealthy children. And if this was back in the 80s and those people were unhealthy then, can you only imagine what's going on now? I appreciate you all for spending the last 31 minutes and 47 seconds. I know my brother Steve Willis was here, but we have another voyeur, and I don't know who you are, but I want to tell you thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank everybody for being here. Now, for those of you who are going to watch this in the replay, I want to tell you that I appreciate each and every one of you for being here as well. And it just means so much to me. I hope that you were able to get something from this today because it does, again, it takes me back to a time and a place in my life where I saw the signs and now I can identify them for my children and for those people that are around me. But it also takes me to a place to tell you that there is a true love. Do you know the Father? If you don't know the Father and you're watching this right now, I just want you to know that he loved you for real. He loves you so much that he sent his only begotten son to die for you. He went up this mountain called, that was a Golgotha. It was Golgotha. It was a big mountain, looked just like a big skull. But he walked all the way up that mountain just for you. When he got up to the top of that mountain, they hung him from a tree. And he did that because he loved you. Do you know him today? Do you know him today? Yahawashah. You may have heard him, the name Jesus. Well, the letter J didn't start for about, the last 500 years. But if you go back in the Hebrew and you find out who he is, you'll know that he loved you and that he took that mantle. He took that job description. He took the job title. He took on the physical attributes and did everything he needed to do to come here in this earth realm to get up on that tree. And he became a curse for you and me. And he died for you. All you have to do is simply believe it, simply acknowledge it, and simply ask him to come into your heart. Simply ask him to be with you, to walk with you, to lead you, to guide you, to be your Lord, to be the one who rules over you. Christ within you, the hope of glory, will then take over and lead in your life, and you will be able to follow according to the word. Now, it doesn't make you a robot. It doesn't make you, somebody who has all the answers, and it definitely does not make all good decisions for you. Well, you've still got to do that because even the decision to receive him is going to be yours. It's yours. But my point to you today is that if you're looking for love in all the wrong places and you've never tried him, please try him. This is an invitation that we will have at the end of each and every one of our shows. And so if you going forward here, another one of the shows, and maybe you didn't get a chance to finish this one, well, hey, guess what? The next video is going to meet you right here because this is for you. Okay. All right, everybody. I thank you so very much for tuning in with us today. I'm not sure if the 12 o'clock slot is going to work because it doesn't look like we've had that many people at the 12 o'clock slot. So we're like sticking our finger in everything. We're like, okay, 3 o'clock, no. 12 o'clock, maybe. 1 o'clock, possibly. So I don't know, but we are going to figure it out until we tweak it and get it right. I'm going to run the analytics on this after just to see when it would have been a better time to put this up. And then maybe there'll be folks who are at work who can come in later. I don't know. But let's look at a couple of our comments before we go. And we're going to be closing this up pretty soon. Hey, good morning, dear sister. We said, hey, good morning, big bro. And then, oh my goodness, I hate to hear that. So sorry you went through the abuse. Yes, I did. And I went through it specifically. Obviously, now I look at that, Steve Willis. I look at it now that, yeah, I went through it, but I went through it. And now I'm able to identify it, share it, after going through counseling, after becoming, a minister, and after becoming ordained and all that stuff, and taking courses, and psychological, psychology courses and different things like that, and sitting with different people that help me understand this. As far as my ministry is concerned, it makes me able to share with other young men and women, especially young people, not necessarily older men, but definitely, young adolescents, and then young women, that you don't have to stay in that type of situation, because I've lived it and I know the signs and I know how to help people get through it. But the only one who can truly help people, thank you and welcome for coming in. I see somebody else just came in. Thank you so much. The only one who can really help us through those things is our Father. And I believe that when people are really, truly, and honestly looking for all of those individuals to love them, they're just looking for Him and they don't know it, because He is love. And once you find Him, you find that there's nothing that compares to His kind of love. So I appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Thank you for all of you who are going to watch this on the replay. And remember what we always say here on this channel, that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Most High Yah. You guys take care of yourselves and take care of one another. To receive instant notification each time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.
La